We are very pleased to welcome our first guest this afternoon, Wall Street super lawyer Rodgin Cohen. He is the senior chairman of the law firm Sullivan and Cromwell. His client's arguably the biggest and most important in the financial world. We welcome you back, Raj, to Money Moves. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, Deirdre, a pleasure as always to be with you.
Thank you, thank you. What is the tone like, Raj, from your clients these days? Are they more worried, more anxious, or less so as we get further and further away from the financial crisis?
I think there's less anxiety, and if you need a demonstration of that, it was the success of the most recent stress tests. Incredibly adverse macroeconomic assumptions, and basically every bank passed.
Every bank passed. That said, there are still a lot of minefields, or at least navigation to do, which is why you have your clients and why they're grateful to you. We know post-Dodd-Frank, still waiting for the Volcker Rule to actually trickle down, other than the fact that prop traders have moved off their desks. They're working in hedge funds, they're working in prop shops. But what are the primary preoccupations as far as regulation go? How are you preparing your clients?
Well, less anxiety doesn't translate into the absence of concern, and there is concern, and it is about the implementation of Dodd-Frank. Certainly, the Volcker Rule is one. If it goes too far in its interpretation, it really will cut into very legitimate business activities. I think the second, which is a real sleeper, is a proposal which would limit counterparty risk. And there is a calculation methodology which could be very, very confining and force a real reconfiguration of the way interbank transactions occur today. I think those are the two areas of most concern.
With the counterparty risk, because people in D.C. and in the media, I mean, this was the big theme, or one of the big themes that everybody came away with after the credit crisis, is that counterparty risk is dangerous. This is what caused it. But I hear you saying it's not necessarily the way. Are we getting the interpretation wrong, I guess is my question.
I think there's a real danger that the calculation methodology which is proposed is just so divorced from real risk. But I also think it's important to step back and look and see whether counterparty risk was really the driver that it's assumed to be. After all, when Lehman failed, it is interesting that not a single bank had substantial exposure. So the real experience doesn't suggest the counterparty risk is as great an issue as some seem to believe.
What would be the better way then to actually make the calculation? Because, I mean, this could be huge, right? This is a $1 trillion issue.
Absolutely. And I think the best way to do it would be to start with bank models, which have already been approved by the Federal Reserve for capital purposes, but models are fallible. So what you do is you stress them as they do on stressing capital. That would be one way, or you do a multiplier of that. But there are many ways you could do this where the risk correlation is substantially greater than what is proposed.
What happens if the current proposal goes through? What does this mean to Wall Street's biggest financial institutions?
It is clearly a major negative for them. It is also a major negative for the concept of central clearing for derivatives, which would be hit directly. It is a real question even for Europe, because sovereigns are not exempt as U.S. governments are. So there are many ramifications, not merely for the financial institutions, but for the markets as a whole.
There's often this tricky relationship between Wall Street and regulators and D.C. Do you think that there is an open door or an open mind to looking at the proposal as it stands now and perhaps making tweaks?
I think there definitely is, and I think you can see that the Fed has been prepared throughout the Dodd-Frank process to listen to comments, whether it's the Durbin Amendment or the guiding principles for the timing of the Volcker Rule, I think there is an open mind at the Fed.
That's a great example, right? Because so the Volcker Rule, we all understand what it is, who can take risk and where, but banks have, what, a 2-year period to actually implement it?
Correct. Instead of trying to enforce very complex rules from day one, the Fed gave them the 2-year period to get it right.
Practicality-wise, what other changes are you seeing right now on Wall Street? I alluded to prop traders who are now either in prop shops, they're at CTAs, or they're funding hedge funds or going inside. Are there any other applications that you see now, manpower-wise, based on regulation?
Well, certainly there are two. One is compliance. There is an incredible focus on compliance. It is being enforced through very significant enforcement actions against financial institutions. And the second is risk management. Substantial resources are being poured into risk management.
Do you think this being an election year is going to change any or all of the tone or the understanding that Wall Street and D.C. have among each other?
No, I believe this ultimately comes down more to the regulatory agencies, and the election year may affect them at the margin, but I would suspect that this is only a marginal issue.
If there is one thing, and I know you and I have spoken in the past about liquidity, about parts of Basel III, if there is one thing out there that you could change or improve for Wall Street, what would it be now at this juncture?
Well, I think you actually hit it right on the head, and that is the Basel III liquidity proposal would simply create serious problems throughout the markets. Here again, the Federal Reserve's own proposal is much more correlated with actual liquidity risk. So if the Basel Supervision Commission could pick up with where the Fed was, it would be very helpful.
All right, and Raj, we forgot to invite Tom Keene to come here and sit and have a condolence drink with you for the Red Sox. We'll get off that subject very fast, but in the meantime, I will thank you. Next time we'll have Tom and Scotch, and it'll be
right, a complete now that's picture. A subject of real worry.
I know, I heard you say, I don't know, maybe you could give a little advice to the Red Sox, right?
Right. Let's get some people healthy and trade for some relief pitching.
All right. There you have it. Words of wisdom from Raj Cohen on two big subjects, Wall Street and baseball. Raj, thank you so much for stopping by, Senior Chairman of Sullivan and Cromwell.